Hi, church. Today is day 31, and our topic for today is spell it out. So I wonder what you would think when I talk to you about spelling it out. You may think, what does this mean? Well, I'll give you an idea, but we'll illustrate that. And the first thing is that I remember the time when our children were little, and myself and Christy, in order to convey some messages, we used to spell it out. And sometimes they would wonder what we were talking about. But today, my topic, as I said, is spell it out. So let me illustrate it to you. In Matthew 20:29, and this is what it says. Now, as they went out of Jericho, a great multitude followed them. And behold, two blind men sitting by the road, when they heard that Jesus was passing by, cried out, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David. Then the multitude warned them that they should be quiet. But they cried out all the more, saying, Have mercy on us, Lord, Son of David. So Jesus stood still and called them and said, What do you want me to do for you? So imagine Jesus is asking these two blind men so what he was asking was just a loaded question. And that was, what do you want me to do for you? Now, how many of you, if you were there in that situation, you would have said, Come on, Jesus, can't you see that these people are blind? What do you want them to say? Would they be asking for something else? But you know what? Jesus had a purpose for asking them the question. And his purpose was, he wanted because he was forcing them to define exactly what they wanted from him. He made them verbalize, that is, to tell him exactly what they wanted. It wasn't because Jesus didn't know, but he wanted to make sure that they knew what they wanted. And sometimes this is a question as Jesus asked them, and this is what they replied. They said to him, Lord, that our eyes may be opened. So Jesus had compassion and touched their eyes. And immediately the eyes received sight and they followed him. So the question today is, what if Jesus was asking you the same question? And the question was, what do you want me to do for you? Would you be able to spell out the promises, the miracles, and dreams that God had put in your heart? Would you be at a loss? Would you be able to tell Jesus, this is what I want, this is a list that I've got, I've prayed about it, and this is what I want? Or would you ask the question, you'd be surprised suddenly to say, wow, I didn't really think about it. Because the irony is that we become spiritually blind as those men were physically blind. Because the reason is, at times, we are not asking Jesus. We're not asking God for what he had put in our heart. And so therefore, when we don't do that, we cannot define what success is. Because for us to live a successful life, we have to define what is it that we want. What is it that we're asking Jesus? If Jesus asked you the question today, what is it that you want me to do for you? What would be your answer? And sometimes what we do is, and sometimes you may ask, so what do we do in this case? What is the solution to it? And the first thing I would say is be very specific. Don't be vague. And because when you pray, be very specific when you pray. Sometimes we just pray, we just say a prayer and we rush off. But the problem is we don't take our time to be specific. Because how would you know if God answered your prayer if you're not specific in what you want? The second is to have faith. And that is to believe that God is going to answer your prayer. Sometimes and I remember I used to do this in my early days as a Christian. I would pray about something and then I would ask a question and think in my mind, would God really answer that question, that prayer? What happens if God doesn't? What happens if I've asked something that's not in the will of God? And there's a lot of people who do that. Lots of people will say, I've prayed this, but I don't know if that's the will of God. But you know something? What God wants you is, God puts that desire in your heart and you pray it out. And sometimes all God wants you to do is to step out in faith. So the question Jesus is asking you today is, what do you want me to do for you? So like the blind man, we still need to encounter God. We still need to answer Him. So the question is, what are you praying for? What miracle are you waiting for? So the blind men, they waited at their Jericho and they received their healing. So when we think about it, the question is, what was their Jericho? And so coming back to spelling it out, how would they have, what was their Jericho? But their Jericho spelt. Their Jericho, repeat, was spelt as S-I-G-H-T. So they spelt it out, and that was sight. So that's what they were praying for when they asked and they appealed to God, to Jesus, to help them. What their Jericho that they encountered that day was S-I-G-H-T, which is sight. So simply put, the question is, what is your Jericho? How do you spell your Jericho? So Jericho is spelled in many ways. And if a loved one, so assuming someone has cancer, someone has or is sick, what is their Jericho? How would you pray? Because their Jericho, as we said, is spelled Healing, which is healing. If someone is backslidden, right? It's spelled Salvation, which is salvation. Or if a family is falling apart, it is spelled Reconciliation, which is reconciliation. So if you have a dream beyond your finances, what is your Jericho? And how do you spell your Jericho? It is spelled Provision. That is provision. So the question is, what is your Jericho? Today is the day to claim your promise and spell out your miracle. And sometimes we are too afraid of spelling out that miracle. We are too afraid of spelling out what we want. And so therefore today, I ask the question is, what is your Jericho? What is it that you want to spell out to God? And as we said, in order to spell it out, you have to be specific. So therefore, when you are sick and you want healing, your Jericho then becomes, as I said, healing, which you're now asking God. Because sometimes what we do is we just say, God, heal me. But we don't push through. We don't spell it out. Because when you spell it out, you become very specific in what you're doing. When you spell it out, you become faith driven, because you know that when you pray and you are driven by faith, you then will get your miracle. And lastly, you don't have to worry whether your prayer is answered or how it is answered, because you have to leave that to God. Because all we were called to do is to call out to God. And what we do is we leave the rest to God. So most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want. So today, church, as we close, the question is, what is your Jericho? Be specific and believe that when you pray, that God will come through for you. Thank you.